Welcome to the Shaman Stories podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy, and this is the podcast where we talk to people about their journey into spirit. And today's guest, we have Jessica Spangler here. Thanks for being here, Jessica.
Thanks for inviting me. It's an honor.
So, why don't you tell the people a little bit about what you do today and your practices?
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So my biggest priority is I am a stay-at-home mom and wife. I have a almost 4-year-old son, and I have been married for I think it's like 6 years now, but 5 years. Well, I couldn't even do that math. But we've been together for like 15. So I don't even count the marriage part because we've been together forever. So that's like my highest priority. Last year I decided to launch a business basically helping parents be the parent they want to be in many different ways. And so I incorporate human design because human design is pretty important. Knowing like who you are and who your child is changes the way you parent altogether. If you're trying to parent them and it's not working, it may not be, it may be that way because it's not in their design or your design. There's some sort of force. So knowing those two things like from the get-go totally helps. I also incorporate a thing called emotion code. And so for those of you who have not heard about emotion code, I can go a little bit deeper later, but it's basically releasing trapped emotions from the body, so that you can live to your fullest potential without all of the trapped stuff bogging down your energy. I also incorporate just basic teachings of like teaching the parents how to mineralize their children, get them a good, strong foundation, work through what we call detoxing. We don't use the word sickness, we use detoxing because sickness is a negative word, whereas detoxing the body is just getting rid of the stuff that it doesn't need anymore. So I help them build that foundation and teach them different ways to kind of switch their lifestyle naturally, move into a more natural home. Um, and I try to help them do it on a budget because we all know how the economy is going these days. Sometimes it's really hard to get that natural lifestyle and still afford it. So I kind of just take all of those and combine and help parents understand their children and be the parent they want to be.
Nice. Yeah, and that's kind of how I found you was first we talked to your father, Robert, had him on the show about human design. And then after Robert and I were done recording, we were talking more about what you do. And it just so happens that you're in the same like mineralization homeopathic group that my wife is in. And so it just made the connections even more kismet of, oh, let's let's continue this conversation with human design, but also looking at it from the viewpoint of raising children, mineralization, making sure that everyone has the right kind of stuff they need. And we'll definitely get into that conversation in a little bit. But here I like to start people off with, what was life like for you as a child? Were you doing these kind of things? Was this ever on your radar? Like, what was, life like?
Oh, absolutely not. I started taking 800 ibuprofens when I was probably way too young, and I ate them like candy for pain. Um, I would eat fast food all the time. I mean, we grew up on SpaghettiOs and ramen noodles, and health lifestyle was not really a thing. Um, not good, not bad. Just wasn't really like that's not where I was brought up. My mom was a single mom, and so my dad Robert wasn't in our life most of our life, and so it was just her, and she would work like 12-hour shifts, but she always made sure to make sure there was some sort of food in the house, and she was there and she was present and she was, she'd go to our school things, and so I mean, overall, I think I had a good childhood, but when it came to like health and like natural health, not even not even close to my radar. No, I was a fast food junkie who didn't really care about my body and didn't care what I was doing to it.
Yeah, and that's the hard thing, right? Because especially when it comes to food, because I was kind of raised the same way too. Both of my parents were severely overweight as a child, and but they were going by even the FDA recommendations. It was like, I can't believe it's not better, it's healthier for you than regular butter, or make sure you get the low fat, yogurt, the low fat this, low fat that, and you even look at what they recommend for people with diabetics, and that stuff's not good for you because it's just 90% of it's chemical. It's not even real food.
Yeah.
And so it's like you want that grass-fed butter, you want the full fat yogurt, you want the real food as much as possible, but it's hard because you're also living on a budget. You know, you had a single mother who's working her butt off trying to make sure you guys are taken care of. It's like, what can I make quickly, sustainably so my kids can eat? I'm not working another 2 hours when I come home from my long shift. You know, they do the best they can, and, you know, you can't fault them for that. It's lack of education and information. And I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you can't eat organic, if you can't eat grass fed, that's fine, but try to eat as fresh as possible.
Yeah.
That's the best thing we can do. It's work within your budget, but try to make it as fresh as possible.
Mhm. Yep, absolutely. She was a trauma nurse most of my life, and so I grew up in, like, the healthcare, and so, medication was normal, antibiotics was normal, um, eat canola oil, not butter, because it's bad for your heart was normal, we fried in vegetable oil because it was better than butter, and yeah, and it was, I mean, she did everything that she thought she was doing the best because that's what she was taught in the medical world, and it's been a it's been an interesting kind of venture out of that. But yeah, not even close to the me I am now, I wouldn't have even thought of being
Mm.
or becoming way back then.
Yeah, I agree. I didn't even look at that until I had my first child. God, he's turning 14 next month. So 14, 15 years ago, it was, oh, I'm having a kid. I want to make sure they get the best food they have. Now I'm looking at buying chickens. And then, you know, you go down the whole rabbit hole of, oh, there's a lot more to this. The
Yeah.
food
Yep.
system's jacked up and we need to do something. What can I do for myself, basically?
Yeah, we got chickens last year because of the same reason. Like, I watched, something about eggs and the bleach that goes on the eggs and what they're actually eating and what free range versus pasture raised means, and so now I have chickens,
Breathing
and we butchered
cage.
our own, and we butchered our own turkeys, and eventually I'll have a farm where I can just do all of my own animals and not have to deal with anything.
It's worth it. It's a lot of work. I've been doing it for yeah, about 10, 15 years now, and I've done everything from raising chickens, quails, rabbits, pigs. We have sheep. I've done cow. Like you just got to find the balance for what makes the most amount of sense for you to raise versus what the output that you get out of it.
Yeah,
Because, like I said, I've done cows and it was just too much work by myself. Pigs is like my limit. And then same with sheep. It's like, this is what I can do by myself. Rabbits were great for a while, but they became more work in the long run for me personally.
yeah, they seem
But
like a lot of work for not a lot of meat.
well, and again, it depends on you can get over 200 pounds of meat easily in 1 year from just 3 rabbits.
Oh, wow, okay.
And that's not even constant breeding. That's cycling them through, taking your
Yeah,
time with, and each litters, 8 to 10 rabbits, and then you grow those out, and then you give the moms a break and all that good stuff, but it's more time consuming in the long run, but if you only have a small amount of property or even a garage, you can do so much with just that.
that totally makes sense.
Like, you don't need a lot of space. You could do aquaponics and do your own fish farming with your own vegetable garden at the same time.
Yeah,
Like, there's a lot of options.
yeah, I like it.
But with that, but yeah, I agree even to the 800 ibuprofen. I mean, that's the army medication right there. That's what we were getting all the time.
Yeah,
Our mom with like a big thing of
yeah,
ibuprofen and just take it when you need it. Take 2, 3
yep,
times a day. You know, you're good. Don't worry about
yeah.
the liver.
What's a liver?
And
Yeah,
so
yeah, absolutely.
with that though, so at what point did you start looking at, mineralization, human design, emotion code? Which one came first for you?
So the natural health started first. I was in 2 car accidents within 30 days in 2016. The second one, I acquired a traumatic brain injury, and physical therapists and neurologists and so many doctors later, I finally had a neurologist look at me. He was giving me anti-epileptics because he thought I was having focal seizures. So we did a few days of that. I ended up in the hospital on IV steroids for a massive reaction to those. And once I got recovered from that, I had like massive leg pain. I could hardly walk. I couldn't get out of bed because my migraine was so bad. I was puking. Um, did my follow-up appointment and he looked at me and he goes, I think you're too in tune with your body. And I need you to work on not focusing so much on what's going wrong because it's all in your head. And that was it. Like, I was so done. I had a complete change of personality. I had massive anger. I had body pain. Um, I would cry for no reason. I would just lay on the bathroom floor and cry for hours because I don't know, the sink wouldn't turn on cold water right. Like it was it was extreme. Um, and I knew that my body was screaming, and the only thing I knew was doctors and medical. Um, and it took him looking at me and telling me that I was done. I needed something else because obviously this wasn't going to work. So I started actually down healing crystals. I started that route first, and so I've got some of those in my hand. My whole office is covered. Um, I would go to the metaphysical fairs with my mom. We've done that since I was a very little kid. That was like the only thing like woo-woo that I really did in my life is we would go to the metaphysical fairs. And so I went to this fair and I would go like every fair and there was this one lady there and every time I just buy a stone, just whatever would call to me, whether I believed it or not, I didn't know, but I was gonna go with it. This looks like it was gonna help with that, so let's buy it and see what happens. Um, this festival in particular, I had massive anxiety. I had a panic attack as soon as I walked in there. Prior to the accident, I never had any of that. Like, I didn't know what a panic attack was. And I walked up to her table and I was full blown sweating. I couldn't breathe. I was almost in tears. And my mom's like, well, just tell her what's going on. I was like, I just want to go home. Just get me out of here. I just want to go home. And she said, well, just tell her what's going on. And I said, I can't. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to say this. I can't. I just looked at mom and I said, I can't. And the lady looked at me and she hands me two rocks and she said, take a deep breath. And I took a deep breath holding these two stones and everything disappeared. I could breathe. I didn't want to cry. The sweating stopped. Felt okay in my body. And I looked at her and I goes, I don't know what the hell you just did, but what was that? And she's like, um, I think it's time for you to come see me. And I'm like, come see you where? I haven't worked for 3 years. I'm not going anywhere and I'm not doing anything. Well, she did Reiki healing. And so that was my birthday gift for my mom. She said, here you go. I'm paying for it. Let's go do a session. I couldn't even drive across town without panicking. How the heck was I going to get to Denver? So we figured it out. My mom drove me up there. When I walked into the session, it was the same thing. I was having panic attacks, anxiety. I had lost all of my strength from the car accident. I couldn't even lift a gallon of milk. Um, and what little I could lift hurt. So I walked in there and I did a healing session. When I walked out of there, we went to the grocery store and I just started lifting, like mom's like, I need to grab some water. And so I just started lifting the case of water in the cart and she's just staring at me. I'm like, why are you looking at me like that? And she goes, because you're lifting those like they're paper. I was like, oh, oh, yes, I am. Well, that's cool. I don't know what happened, but okay. And so I think it was about 3 or 4 weeks later, I went to Reiki 1 training retreat, and became Reiki 1 certified. And then I went through Reiki 2, I went through Reiki 3. During that time, I started learning about like the parabens and shampoos and detergents, because I couldn't use any of it. Like my body had freaked out on me. I would use shampoo and I would just break out everywhere. I would wash my clothes and I couldn't wear them because it would burn my eyes or I couldn't breathe or I'd have a rash. So that's where like some of the natural shifts started. And then um, dad had introduced me to a friend of his who would do human design, and she also did emotion code. And so I did a couple sessions with her, just kind of here and there. Um, but human design is a little intimidating at first. Like, I don't want to face those demons and I don't want to try to be that person and, excuses. And so I did a little bit here and there. Then my son was born. And when I was pregnant, I knew I wanted to do things natural. I wasn't going to vaccinate, I wasn't going to circumcise. We were doing all the good things. But I did it to like a crazy extreme to where after he was born, people had to wear hospital gowns to come over. Like if they used normal detergent or perfume or anything, smoked cigarettes, didn't matter. They would wear a hospital gown and a hair cap to hold my son. And if they didn't want to, they didn't get to hold him. I thought that I was doing the best that I could protecting him from chemicals. I now know different. So when he was born, I reached out to dad and I said, "Here is his birth time." Like he was like minutes old, like 10 minutes old, maybe. And I said, "Okay, I need this chart and I need you to tell me what I need to know to parent him." So that started that route. Um, then the health journey continued with Fiercely Empowered Mama. I found it by accident one night. My son would wake up screaming for no reason. Nothing would soothe him. No breast milk, no pacifier, no rocking, no holding, no walking. We did it all. And then he would just go back to sleep. Like nothing had ever happened. Just out of the blue. And so I was searching for answers, trying to figure out like what is happening and how do I help him? And that's how I came upon FEM. So it kind of like unfolded in a very intricate way, and it's about almost 10 years in the making now. Um, but yeah, so
Yeah, and I can relate to the going too far the other way because you go down those rabbit holes of everything that's bad, and then it's like, oh, now I got to go into this new protective mode and try to block all the bad stuff, and it's you can only do the best you can do without driving yourself crazy. So it's good that you at least recognized that later and was like, yeah, okay, you know, there's only so much you can do without causing yourself more stress and eventually more disease from that stress. So it's
yeah.
trying to find that balance with everything that you have going on.
Yeah.
And then with that, so I know we had Robert on, but go ahead and explain a little bit about human design and just a brief synopsis of what that is in case people don't know, and then how you're using it, with your son.
Mhm. Absolutely. So, human design is the science of differentiation. It helps you understand like what you're here to do and how you interact with the world. And so there's four different types. There's manifester, generator, reflector, and projector. There's also a manifesting generator, but I try not to like pay too much attention to that one because we want to teach generators to live as a generator before we like incorporate this manifesting part to it. Um, that can get like a whole, you know, long, long lesson later.
And I'd have to.
You have the four main types. So my son, I am a generator, and so generators are the builders. It's 70% of the population. We're the doers. We're the busy bees. My son is a manifester. Manifestors are just here to do. They don't care what they do. They don't care who they're going to affect, and they don't really care if anybody likes what they're doing or not. Um, Having a manifestor child, especially as a first child, is a challenge, because they don't do no, they don't do stop, they don't care what you're telling them. They're gonna do what they wanna do and how they wanna do it, whether you like it or not, and so the fun part about manifestors is you have to find that fine line to give them freedom, but also still teach them boundaries, teach them guidance. With a manifestor child, you actually just want to You teach them to inform and you teach them to ask permission. So they ask permission as a child and they inform as an adult. And so that's what I've done with him. Um, he was one in the backyard with real tools and half naked and didn't care. And he'd just be out there with whatever. And people, your son has scissors. Yeah, I don't care. He knows what to do with them and he knows how to be safe with them. It's fine. He's one. Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly what happens. And so I've raised him basically by his design and still, and days are challenging sometimes because we, one, have conditioning. So things that I've learned through my lifetime, I've babysat kids since I think I was 10. And so I was that parent figure most of my life. Most of that I had to throw out as a parent because none of that works on Manifester. They they're their own being and they do what they want. And so you teach them respect, you teach them boundaries, and then you just let them be. Um, Helicopter parenting is not a thing, especially with a manifester, because you're going to get more pushback. You're going to get frustration. And a manifestor's not self theme, which means not acting within alignment of their design, is anger. And man, do I see it. I can always tell when I'm trying to enforce rather than guide with him because the kid gets angry and he makes it known.
Yeah, and I would also say, I mean, father of 2 boys myself, one's just now turning 14, the other one's 9, but at that age, it was like, it didn't matter what you say half the time. If they wanna do something, they wanna do it. They're both looking at their charts now, they're both generators, and I'm the manifesting generator in the house, but everybody else in the house is generators. So it's like, I'm constantly the one trying to do stuff, and they're just like, "Yeah, yeah, just do you need help?" I'm like, "No, I don't think so, but yeah."
Yeah.
It's just a constant battle.
Yeah, that's the fun part with human design. I mean, you start with your type and your strategy and your authority, but it goes like so much deeper. I mean, you have all the different centers and the different gates, and then those change as the earth rotates, and yeah, it's an adventure. And yeah, I mean, and then on top of that, he's a boy. And so you still have that boy to him. So yeah.
And so with that, when you're looking at your charts from the parent perspective and you're seeing trying to think of the best way to word this, but obviously I think at some points, and you kind of mentioned it, you'll have conflicts of how you were supposed to be versus how they're supposed to be. So do you have to kinda compromise more to help him, or do you try to find a balance as much as possible?
We try to find a balance. It's difficult. Um, there's times when you're trying to get out the door and they don't know which pants they want to wear, because, maybe they have an undefined solar plexus. And so they're taking in your emotion. And so I'm frustrated. I want out the door and I'm ready to go. So then he's frustrated and he wants to not make a decision now because he's overwhelmed. Um, with the manifestors, they don't have their own sacral energy center and generators do. And so he soaks me in like no other. And so depending on what level I'm at, that's what level he's at. And then I get frustrated because he's at this level. And so I have to like take a step back and be like, oh, I was at that level. Okay. And so it is a lot of breathing.
Mm.
I've gotten really good at deep breathing. And then using our different tools. So we use essential oils, we use flower essences, we use crystals. We do it all to just try to maintain a level where we both can still be in alignment with our design, but not want to like kill each other.
And I'm assuming your husband's on board with this mentality too, and he looks at his chart, or is it more just you kinda running the show?
Um,
I'm always curious how, because spouses don't always align with the other one when they're trying to do stuff like this, and sometimes there's that paradigm, that battle. And
Ye
battle might not be the right word, so it doesn't mean you're constantly butting heads, but,
yeah.
you know, I find that with family, it's not everybody agrees with the changes people wanna make, and sometimes there's a little butting of heads.
Yes, I got really lucky. I have a very, very supportive husband who goes along with my crazy ideas for the most part. He may mumble under his breath that he thinks it's crazy or may not work or, yeah, okay, let's try that. But I got really lucky. I'm like, hey, we're gonna do this. And he's like, okay, here we go. Um, but he does not go like I'll read him stuff off of his chart or explain things to him. And he's pretty receptive, but he doesn't usually go seeking the information himself. It's me sending him stuff or telling him stuff or, hey, when you're talking to Barrett, let's word it like this because this is what it does to the brain when you word it like that. And he's like, okay, I'll try. But he was pissing me off. And I was like, I know, but it's not going to do any good. You're just going to get more mad talking to him. So yes, I am blessed when it comes to that because he just goes along with any crazy idea that I have.
And with that, then what about, like, your circle of friends or other families, mom, the aunts, uncles, I don't however big your family is, brothers, sisters,
Yeah, there isn't much of
whatever you
one.
feel comfortable sharing, let's put it.
Yeah, no, of course. There really isn't much of one. When I went, super psycho, with the hospital gowns and stuff when he was born, a big chunk of family and friends disappeared. They didn't agree with me, they didn't understand it, and then so they just kinda dissipated off. Um, what was left, at least from what happened with the car accident because there I changed. I was a completely different person. I started down the natural road. I was a very angry person. I pissed people off really easy because I didn't give a shit. Um, sorry for the
That's
cuss words. Okay, it just happens.
there's a box I check when I upload it, "Is this appropriate for children?" I'm like, "No." Just
Oh, okay. um, and so yeah, so what was left, um, most of them dissipated. I lost connection with most of them. Um, I had one friend really at that time. And I was super excited because she was like in alignment with a lot of the natural stuff and she was going to teach me so much. And then she decided to go to school. And she like threw her whole life into school. And so then I was alone. Um, my mom lives next door, and supports me to the best of her ability. There are things that I come up with that really push against her nursing history, or just what she was taught.
mm,
Um, but she does a really good job, like, trying to accept it. Um, she has absorbed and taken on most of the ways that I talk to. She's watched me talk to my son, and so she does really good supporting that. Who knows what she says behind closed doors, but that's like any person, right? And that's okay. She's allowed to have her opinion, and I love her. She supports me where she can. I now have my father in my life, which was not a thing. He talked about his health challenges, and it actually happened right about the same time as my car accident.
mm,
Sent us both down an ascension path in complete different directions at the same direction at the same time, which brought us together a few years later. And so we were able to work through a lot of the stuff because, I mean, he'll tell you he wasn't a good dad. He wasn't there. And he knows it and he owns it. And we've worked through most of that. So I have him. Um, I have, I mean, there's really not a lot of family that I talk to. Just life in general has kind of sent us all in our different directions. And nobody is as deep into the natural health as I am. And I get a lot of pushback from it because I get accused of shoving it down their throat or, whatever. And so, yeah, I mean, there's not a lot, but Fem actually has helped me create a new circle of friends, and that's just actually starting like end of this year, beginning of this year, because I got really closed off with the accident,
Hmm.
and then with being abandoned, basically, when I had my child, thinking I would have a whole tribe, and I had, just a couple Indians by me instead of the whole tribe. I shut down and I closed off, and so I've just started opening up to try to find friends. My son's almost 4. He wants like kids to play with, and I don't want to play with him all the time. So I want him to have kids to play with. So it's getting bigger and it's getting better. And a big piece of that is thanks to my Fiercely Empowered Mama group. Um, and just having some like finding the right communities
Hmm.
to get into, where I can talk about coffee enemas and whatever comes up, and they don't look at me like I've got 16 heads. They're like, "Oh yeah, that's so cool. Tell me more about that." Um, so yeah, so went from a lot. I used to be a social butterfly. I mean, I was the girl at the bar all the time who knew everybody's name, and then I was the one who never came out of my house. And now I'm kind of in between. I have a 2-4 profile with human design, and a piece of that is hermit, but also like opportunist. So like I love to be around people and I love to like share my knowledge, but then I like to go hide in a hole because it was way too much.
Oh, that's fair. And I always find that part interesting because I've talked to a lot of people so far of usually it's, finding Reiki or finding that's a quote unquote more spiritual path by that definition. And it's usually they get ostracized from their family because they don't understand it. But I think going the natural way, the health food way is also in that same vein, right? Because, you're reading charts, which is tied to astrology, I Ching, and other things, the Kabbalah. Excuse me. And so you're trying to live your life in this realm. And to me, that's no different than someone who's becoming a Reiki practitioner, which you did, or, learning how to be a shamanic practitioner or whatever. And I find it's leading by example, but not criticizing other people for their choices. And once they start seeing the change in you and how you're becoming something more, how you're living your life the way you want to, how you're becoming happier, then they start asking questions. Okay, what is it that you're doing? How did you make that work? Or maybe they're seeing you interact with your kid. How did you make him do that? How did you stop that? And then they'll become more interested in it versus, oh no, we don't allow plastics in my house, or you can't have perfume around my child, or don't you know that stuff's going to kill you? People don't like that. Then they shut down and then they don't want to interact with you. And I and I have those people in my life too who are like, "Oh, you're feeding that to your kids?" Like, "You know what? This is what we got right now and they're hungry. Move on."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I live by the 80/20 rule now. I didn't. It was all or nothing. I was that. Don't come near my child if you've got that. We threw away all our plastics. I would say my whole first year of fem, I was that person. And I did get very forceful. You want to complain because your child's sick all the time. Let me tell you why, and this is what you need to do. And if you're not going to do it, I don't want to hear you talk. Like, just don't. Now I'm working on it still. Some days very hard more than others. So where I just accept them. Um, I listened to one of my classes and she talks about, you just look at them and you go, I love you and I accept you exactly where you are.
mm,
And so I've really been trying to do that, and wait for them to come to me instead of, here, let me throw 17 different things at you to help take care of that. I don't care. It's going to cost you $150. It's going to make your kid feel better. Some people don't have that $150. And so, yeah, so now I live by the 80/20 rule. Um, and, we go out to eat occasionally. And then we just take some extra binders to soak up the yuck. And, um, You know, we that's my husband's favorite. He's like, "Can we 80/20 this?" I'm like, "Okay, fine."
And I think that's a good rule to follow, and again, like we mentioned earlier, you just gotta do the best with what you have, and that is the hard part when it comes to trying to be more, quote, unquote, "natural," because you're talking about all these supplements, and I've seen so many different protocols from so many different people, and it's you start adding up all these supplements that your body supposedly needs and that you're deficient in, and it will stop you from taking this one pharmaceutical pill, but now you're taking 10 supplements 3 times a day, spending, $300 a month just for you. And then you got a family that also needs these things. So now family of 4 times 300, you're looking at 1,200 bucks a month. People don't have it versus insurance pays for this one little pill,
Yeah.
and I have a $2 copay.
Yeah. Exactly.
And
Yeah.
so
And I
it's
mean,
hard.
that's what the government has done for us is you know, they wanna make it easy so they can keep you in that route, and they've done everything that they can to make natural health care hard. But if you look at it, like, our ancestors didn't have a pharmacy. They walked out to the garden, they picked some herbs, they made you a concoction, and you took that for a while. Um, and that's where I hope that someday we can get back to. And I mean, it's already starting. You watch Instagram and TikTok, and everybody's doing sourdough now. And, people are starting to get their own chickens, and raw milk is starting to be a thing. We switched to raw milk 2 years ago, and I'll never go back. I didn't even know anything about milk. And we
Yeah, the
switched to raw.
history behind that is kinda crazy because it was
Oh, it's so crazy.
you had the farmer, he was there outside the town started getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and then started to encircle the farmer at the time, and then they were like, "Okay, well, let's." Then they had the beer company that was in the town. They were giving them the byproducts, all the leftovers. The cows were eating it because it was cheaper, but then that was making the cows sicker because they're inside the city limits and all this pollution and eating the beer stuff, and they were getting sicker, and then, "Oh, okay, well, we can fix the milk that's making people sick now by just pasteurizing it. We're just gonna cook it off and pasteurize it. This makes it clean, this makes it healthy. It kills off all the vitamins and nutritions that you need, but, it's we're gonna cook the milk basically. So instead of taking care of the cows and fixing the cows issue, we're just gonna fix the byproduct of the cow and then start giving that to the customers. That way, we don't lose the supply chain from the beer and everybody else and giving them the hops that are spent."
Yeah.
It just when I learned that, I was like, "Are you serious?"
Yeah. Yeah, it was a very interesting like, aha moment for me too when I learned, like, and that's what it is. Like, nobody really looks at the root cause of things anymore. It's, "Here, let's do this to fix the problem, because 'cause that'll mask that for a while, and we'll be good." And then here, I mean, medication, same thing. Pasteurization, same thing. Glyphosate, it's cool, let's just kill all the bugs. No big deal, because then you won't have the germs and the bugs on your fruits and vegetables, and you'll be good to go. Look at what happened with glyphosate and glyphosate poisoning. One of my biggest recollections, I was diagnosed with celiac first and then gluten intolerance on this crazy journey because I had stomach issues since I was like 8. And I was trying to figure out what was going on. And shortly around the accident, I got diagnosed with that. So I went completely gluten free at 21. And it's miserable. Like, it's just miserable. Most gluten-free taste food tastes like crap, and it's hard to find, and you can't really eat anywhere, and so I just started carrying food with me, and it wasn't until Fem that I learned, like, most cases of celiac is actually just glyphosate poisoning.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a one other rabbit hole,
Yes, we
but
won't go there.
we're gonna spray the wheat so it looks better and contains itself better when we pick it,
Yeah,
poisoning, but it's safe. It's just
safe.
like everything else. It's like, "Oh, but it meets the recommended safe tolerance." It's like, "Okay." But when we add 6 or 7 things together to make something new, and each one of those 6 or 7 things has the recommended safe tolerance, are we not compounding that? Is this
No,
now
no,
not
no.
5 times the amount of what it should have because we added 5 products?
Nope,
Well,
because we're still under single limits, so we're good.
yeah, and that's, like, yeah, that's a whole nother.
Yes, it is. That'll be part 2 or 3 or 4. No.
Yeah. What's even, fluoride, they're now, "Oh, yeah, fluoride does make you stupid. Fluoride does do this, but we're gonna fight for it." It's like, "Why? You don't need fluoride to make your teeth look shiny and white." Like, this was another byproduct moment of, "Hey, we did a quick test in a lab. It should do this, and we're gonna go ahead and market it to, the dentist industry and tell them it's great and show these quick studies, and now we're gonna put it in your water."
Yeah, exactly.
We don't need it.
Nope.
Like, we use fluoride-free toothpaste. I have well water, and even that, I try to filter it because the way the groundwater is these days, you never
Mhm.
know.
Yeah.
But not everybody, again, can do these things. It's make the best choices where you can. But let's talk a little bit about the FEM group. I know you're only in the group, you're not necessarily employed by them or promoting them, but you've mentioned it a couple times, so maybe just tell people what it is if they're interested in going down that route and looking at it.
Mhm. Absolutely. So FEM stands for Fiercely Empowered Mama. It was created by a lady named Tanya Holcomb. She was kinda in the same boat. She had, 800 ibuprofens, crap lifestyle, um, and started down a natural route with some health issues for herself, then ventured in with her son, and it just exploded, and she wanted a place where moms could come together and feel at home. She wanted a community where they had all those resources. They didn't have to go to Google because Google's a scary place.
Mm,
And you can find 7 different opinions on the one topic you Google, and then you just leave more confused. And so she has this community. She opens the doors once a year. Um, and later, if you'd like, I can send you like the waitlist link for people who may be
sure.
interested. Maybe you
Yeah,
can link that in the bio or whatever.
put it in the show notes.
Um, but they open at the beginning of every year. But at the end of every year, about September-ish, she does a free mamahood course. And it's 4 to 6 weeks. And that's actually how I found her, was she was doing one of those classes. I scrolled upon it in one of the ads on Facebook, was listening to her talk about her son, and I started bawling because everything she was describing my son, and didn't even know it because she was talking about hers. Um, but she went into nervous system dysregulation and all of the things that mouth breathing at night can cause, and all of these things, and simple, like natural ways to take care of it. One of the biggest things the foundation is mineralization. And so we are all taught use iodized salt because you're going to get the iodine, and you don't use a lot of it because then salt actually will cause heart issues and blood, all of the things, right? But you want to make sure it's iodized, so you're getting iodine. So iodized salt actually does not have an iodine that will go into the body and the blood system correctly. And most salt is full of microplastics. So you like the base of this is mineralization. So you want minerals. You can get minerals from salt as long as it's a good salt. So we use Redmond's real salt, and that is natural salt from Utah with all of the minerals that your body needs. And you want to eat a ton of it. So we use it on everything. We use it in everything. We keep a dish of it on the counter or a salt shaker, depending on what's going on at the time. And my son knows you are more than welcome to help yourself to salt. And I can always tell the days that he's just feeling kind of off because he just goes to the counter, he's dumping salt in his mouth. I'm like, okay, cool. Let's go outside and get some grounding now, you know? And that's the base of it. So we use the Redmond's real salt, and then we make a thing that she calls herbal infusion, and we drink it every day. And it's just, 4 different herbs that's going to give you vitamins and minerals and hydration. Most of the world is dehydrated. And so you want to teach your cells how to rehydrate. And so that's part of, the process. But those two things alone, like that's the simple, affordable way. You can do that in less than $100, and then it will last you months. And so that's where I like to start moms. But yeah, so this group, um, like I said, she opens once a year, but it's just a community. It is a community of women where you can post anything. She has courses, she does classes, she does live classes. You have a whole thing in Kajabi where you can go through a bunch of different classes and things to learn a whole bunch. Um, And then she just does different events and just teaches like different things. And so that's where I've learned probably a good majority of my stuff. Has sent me in different routes now, finding more information about, she recommends books left and right. I've never been a book person, but that is my goal this year is to read one book a month of all these things because she'd recommend it. And I'm like, oh, I'm gonna buy that book, and then it just like sit on my shelf. I am now third year. This is my third year in Fem. I am also now the Fem mentor for the Western region, so Colorado, like that whole all
Hmm.
the way over to California, up and down. Um, and by that, I'm just their support person. I'm just here if they're feeling lost. I'm here if they just need somebody to talk to. I'm here to make sure that they don't fall through the cracks. And I'm here to make sure they don't struggle because Fem can get very overwhelming because it is. It's just this giant portal of all of this information. And if you're not designed to absorb in a certain way in your human design, you get overwhelmed quick because there's a lot. And so I have taken and I've incorporated some human design in that. I'm like, hey, look, send me your birth information. Let's look and see. Okay, cool. Don't start there. Don't even touch the portal. Pick one live class because you are not designed to absorb that much. Start small. Here we go. This is where we're going to start. Um, but yeah, it's just, it has become a lifestyle. And that's where like Tanya strives for. It's not just another thing you subscribe to. It's just not another class you join. It becomes a lifestyle, and it's called the Femme lifestyle, and that's now the lifestyle we live.
And yeah, because I've seen the portal. There's tons of information there too.
Yeah.
Because my wife was the same. She's like, I don't know where to start. I'm like, I don't know. Why don't you ask? Like, what is it that you want to get out of this class, and where do you want to start? It's like, then
Mhm.
start there.
Mhm.
Work your way through that. Figure it out.
Yep. Yeah, yeah, it's a lot. I mean, and a lot of moms end up joining because of their children have issues.
Mm.
And so they want to like find the answer to that. And really the answer to that is start basic. Start with salt, start with real butter, and make some tea. Start there. Just start small.
Yeah, and mineralization, it's something that people don't think about
Mhm.
because again, all they do is think supplements. Oh, I need these supplements. It's going to cost me this much money. But one example I can give is, I was working with a client. I do shamanic healing, and we're working and we're trying to figure out what's going on, and her energy levels just kept dropping. And then after a couple months, they would go back up, and then they would drop again a couple months later, to the point where, like, she didn't wanna get out of bed, nothing was working good for her. And I'm working on her, and I'm like, "Well, I'm not s" from a spiritual energy side, it's like, "I'm not seeing anything wrong with you.
Yeah.
I don't understand what's going on. Like, we've had multiple sessions, and I don't wanna keep wasting our time, like, I think there's something else there." And I did some muscle testing and I'm like, all right, I think you need to go talk to these people over here because they do more stuff in the mineralization field, looking at supplements and things. And that's what it was she was just extremely deficient. I mean, it was like calcium, magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin A. Like she had like not a long list, but there's like 5 or 6 things where when we looked them up, it was like, oh, yeah, yeah, that explains everything. It was like 5-HTP was one of them, and it was just complete depression, just dropping off, and, like, her real doctor at the time was like, well, I think you're bipolar." And she's like, "Well, I don't wanna take meds for that. I don't think that's what it is." And it's like, I'm looking at her going, "Well, I'm not seeing anything from a negative entity or energetic side." It's like, "You're completely good to go." Okay, so you've gone through the mind, we've looked at the spirit, now you need to look at the body.
Yeah.
And that's what I tell people all the time. It's that holistic approach. It's you can't just focus only on the mind or only on the spirit energetic level and only on the body because all three play such a key role in our lives that we need to look at each one
Mhm.
holistically and make sure that we're addressing each one. Because I work with people with PTSD and trauma, and it's yeah, we can clear out the imprints from the energetic field and help you reset, but we might need to do some work in the head. We might need to do some work in the body, and it's hitting all aspects of ourselves. And
Mhm.
if we don't do that, then we're no better than the quote unquote medical profession. And I'm not knocking nurses or doctors because they're doing what they know and only what they know. They don't look outside the box. And I've seen it on the other side of, oh, well, you only need these supplements and everything will be fine. Or you only need this energy work and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
Maybe, but sometimes you also got to look at the different levels because it could be a combination.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one of the biggest things that I've learned on this journey is it's everything. Um, I mean, we did the Reiki healing. I that's how, and that's a big piece of like how my business is formed as it is we look at it all. We look at mind, body, soul. We look at it all. And it's still like it's still evolving. I don't even know truly what like it looks like. People are like, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "I don't know. I just help parents with their children because I do it all. Like, okay, you're gonna come to me and you're gonna tell me labels, every ADHD, ADD, PTSD. We gotta label everything. No, I
But
don't care about your labels. Tell me what you're feeling. Tell me how you're feeling. Tell me what your child's feeling. Tell me some of the things they go through every day. What does their schedule look like? What does their day look like? What does their stress look like? How's the house? Is the house chaotic? Is it clean? Is it how much outdoor time do they get? Do they eat butter? Because real kids, like not real kids, kids should eat a ton of real butter. Um, but we've all been driven away from butter because it's bad for the heart. It's bad for all the cholesterol and all the things. And so people are like scared of butter. My child just eats chunks of butter. And the days that he's off, he eats a ton of chunks of butter. And that's like one thing we never run out of. But that's one of the first things I start with parents. Just start giving them butter. Put butter on their toast. See if they'll eat it just in a chunk and let them eat a ton of it. And just see how those ADHD symptoms are happening. Or just see how that hyperactivity is. See what happens to the nervous system. And then let's do some emotion code. And let's see if there's anything that's sticking in there that may not even be theirs. It could be prior generations that's holding them back.
Mhm.
And so that's yeah, so my business is still just constantly evolving because as I think of more things or I'm talking to moms, I'm like, "Oh, we need to talk about that too. Let's put this over here." And so I actually have a page on my website and it's just product recommendations. And I've got, some are affiliate links and some are just like quick resource links because I talk about all these things, barefoot shoes, real salt. And they're like, well, where do I find that? I'm like, just go to my website. It's fine. Just go there and it's all there because then it's easy. We as a society need the easy button. And if it's not an easy button, we don't do it.
Yeah, and especially with kids, I mean, diet alone is one of the most important things, diet and screen time. Like,
Hmm.
I see it all the time, like, when my kids were in Cub Scouts, we'd be at these functions, and I would see these parents yelling at their, like, 4 or 5-year-old because 'cause they're running around acting crazy, but the kid's drinking a Coke at the same time. I'm like, "You can't give your son
Hmm.
a Coke and expect him to not act like he's hyped up on a shit ton of sugar.
Yeah.
Like, you can't do that. Or, like, when I see it with my own kids, if they stare at the TV too long, their minds are just done.
Yeah.
And then it's just a whole thing. "Well, I wanna watch more." Like, "No,
Mhm.
you only get it at this time on these dates, and that's it. Like, we're done.
Yeah.
Go outside and do something. Read a book." Like,
One of our easy buttons with nutrition, with our son was dyes and high fructose corn syrup. I'm like, I was not ready to tackle everything, and he was breastfed, so I didn't have to worry for too long. But when he started eating foods, that was my easy. Like,
mm,
I can look for a color word on things, and I can look for high fructose corn syrup. So we're just gonna start small. We're gonna look there, and and then we'll just keep going, and then, slowly now we've cut out seed oils, we've cut out corn, we've cut out and, we just cut out more and more as I learn more, but you have to take the easy button. If it's easy for you to just do high fructose corn syrup, start there, because that within itself is such a powerful chemical that disrupts the nervous system and the brains of these children. And it's in everything. It's in so many things. And so now we just we bring our own ketchup places because most places their ketchup has high fructose corn syrup. And we don't do soda. And when we do, it's like kombucha soda. And the hardest part that I've come across with these parents is, my son he's lived this lifestyle his whole life. I mean, I've been in FEM 3 years. He's almost 4. For the first year of that, he was breastfed, so I didn't have to worry about it. A lot of these parents are not. And so they're getting a lot of the pushback and stuff from their kids because I ate that before. Why can't I now?
yeah.
And so the biggest part of that is just educating them, especially the older ones. Not everybody has a child who's 3 who, understands like my child does. I swear he's 3 going on 15 some days. It's ridiculous. But not everybody has a child like that. And so, be prepared. We go places and I always have dye-free something. If I know I'm gonna go to a parade, I just stuff some dye-free candy in my thing, and then I let him collect the candy. I'm not gonna hold him back. I'm not gonna not let him experience those. And that's where a lot of the moms are. "Well, I feel like he's getting left out." Well, be more prepared. Let me show you how to be more prepared, because then he's not left out. And you find the candies, okay, we've got Dum-Dums, so we bring some suckers. You find some candies that are close to equivalent, and then trade them. Teach them the trade game. Kids love to trade. They love to be fun. You gotta make it fun, you gotta make it exciting, and you gotta make it seem like it's good for them, but not in a lecture way.
Yeah, and it is the hard part as parents too, because it's you want your kids to go to these events, you want your kids to go to some other house for a birthday party or this or that, and then it's you go to these places and it's just tons of crap everywhere basically, and you're
Mm,
just like, "Oh."
yeah,
But at and I get to the point where I'm like, "All right, you get 2 things.
yeah,
Pick 2 things, whatever, I'm not gonna argue about it." Again, going by your 80/20 rule, like,
yeah,
most of the week, everything's great. You get 2 things to pick, and then we're done.
mhm,
But only after you eat, whatever food that's healthy first that we can find.
mhm,
But, go eat that piece of cake, go have the cupcake, whatever. It is what it is. And we did the thing with Halloween for a while. We did the Halloween fairy where basically
yeah.
all their candy got taken away, but they got a present the next day. They got
Yep, we
something
do
that they
that. We do
wanted.
the
So,
switch witch, we call it, but
yeah.
yeah,
And so
yep,
we would change out their candy. Now we
yeah.
don't do that all the time, but again, you do the best you can with what you have.
Exactly, and make sure that it's not stressful for you, and make sure it's fun for them. Kids need fun. They don't need to worry about everything. You wanna teach them my son loves to learn about why, I'll tell him, "We're not able to eat that," and he'd be like, "What's in it? How come?" And so then I just explain to him, "It has this oil, and so this oil causes blah, 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 blah," and he's like, "Oh, I don't wanna feel like that." And I'm like, "I know, but not everybody has a kid like mine, and that's okay." And so you find where your kid is and you meet them where they are.
Mm.
And then you just go from there. And if it means that they have a cupcake at a birthday, they have a cupcake at a birthday party. I just try to but I'm like over prepared and my brain goes crazy. But like if I know I'm gonna go somewhere, I'll stop in King Soopers and I'll grab gluten-free cupcakes because I'd rather them have gluten-free or organic or, whatever. And then I'll just bring them with me. I mean, people know my sister's wedding. She flat out told me I'm probably not going to have gluten-free stuff. So I made enchiladas and I brought them to my sister's wedding. And we had enchiladas while everybody else had pasta, and that was okay. I didn't really care what others thought.
Mhm.
And so when you do it enough and you learn your ins and out, where your limits are, then you meet your kids where they're at. You meet you where you are at because you don't want it to be stressful. And that's where I'd gotten. Like, I went above and beyond and I was overexerting myself trying to make sure no matter where he went, he had the things that I wanted him to have and nothing else.
Yep.
And then it hit a point where we just weren't going anywhere because I didn't want to prepare the stuff for that. And so now we just meet in the middle. I mean, for me, dyes are a hard no. So I just make sure to have candy in my purse all the time.
Yeah, we're finally starting to address that too with the dyes. I mean, my wife's German, so she has family in Germany. Skittles aren't allowed to be sold in Europe,
Yeah.
at least in Germany. Like they're just banned. You're not supposed to have Skittles. So we actually brought Skittles for them because they wanted them so badly. And it's like,
Mm.
you know, we allegedly brought Skittles to Germany, but no. But they can't find it there. They're not allowed to be there because of the dyes and everything they have, and you see it on the ingredients list of everything over there versus here, same company, same brand, but the ingredients are different.
Mhm.
And everyone's like, "Oh, that's not true." It's like, "No, it is.
No, it is
Look
true.
at it." Like,
Yeah.
when you look at the different boxes, you see that we have way more crap in ours than they have in theirs, and I lived in Germany for 15 years. You didn't think of like gluten-free, none of that stuff was even talked about. You just went and got bread, and the bread did nothing to anybody. I'd never heard of anyone having problems with bread when
Mhm.
I was living over there. You came back here and it's all of a sudden everything's gluten this, gluten that. I'm like, "What is going on?" I didn't understand it. Now I get it, but the
Yeah.
food is just way different over there.
Yeah.
The
It's cheaper.
regulations.
It's cheaper to make it with all the crap in it,
Um,
and so they have a higher profit margin over here.
but
And Americans eat
ironically
anything,
yeah,
so
but ironically, the food costs less over there.
yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
it costs less, it's healthier, and then you come here, it costs more,
Yeah, it's
and it's
interesting.
worse for you. I don't.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, the emotion code real quick and how you use that. You kinda touched a little bit on it, but just kinda explain what that does and how you work with it.
Yeah. So emotion code, everybody experiences emotions almost all day, every day. The body processes those. Like as it's coming in, that's just one of the things your subconscious does. Not always does that happen like it's supposed to. And so when the body experiences an emotion and it's not ready to process it, it takes it and it traps it in a little energy bubble about the size of a softball and it sticks it in your a meridian field somewhere. So your meridians are your energy channels that go through your body. And if that flow is going good, then you're able to live a little more freely. You feel better. You you don't get stuck. You're just living and you're happy and you're carefree. Um, when those energy bubbles get stuck in your meridian, it blocks the flow and disrupts that flow. And so then things aren't flowing correctly. So we use magnetic energy because the body and the earth are both magnetic. And so we use the magnetic to release those. I use muscle testing. And so you kind of touched on muscle testing earlier. Muscle testing, your body knows true from false if you can get out of your head. Just let your body talk. And so we use muscle testing and we have a chart of different emotions. And we use the muscle testing to determine which emotions they are and what type of emotions they are. Are they yours from this generation? Are they from your soul's level? Are they from past generations? Are they from your great great grandma? Because energies can be passed down through your different levels. There's also shared emotion. So if you and I were sharing the same exact motion at the same time and my body wasn't to process it, we can trap it. Um, there is also where if you're feeling something and I'm not, my body can trap your feeling. And so we determine what kind it is, and sometimes what level. And um, sometimes it needs more information, such as like an age range, things like that. So we use muscle testing for all of that. A lot of times with adults, I will just use like my finger pull muscle testing. But with kids, I love doing kids. But kids are very visual. And they're all in their head because that's just who they are. And so I use these things called copper dowsing rods with the kids because they can see clearly that I am not like, I'm not breaking my fingers, right? Whereas a kid could easily say, okay, but she's doing that on purpose or whatever. Like, they don't understand strength and weakness, true and false from a body perspective. But these are called copper dowsing rods. And so they're just little poles that I hold and I let them hold them so they can kind of get a feel for them. And then they just tell you true from false. So if I say, I am Jessica, they're going to cross. If I say, I am Sarah, they're going to open. So open is no, closed is yes. And so I use these with the kids to show them as we're going through. Then we use the muscle testing, we find the emotions, and then we just use magnetic energy and I just run it over the governing meridian. If I'm over Zoom, I just connect to them energetically. If I'm in person, then I will run it over the meridian on the child or the person, whoever I'm doing. Most of my sessions are done over Zoom because I'm a stay at home mom and it's a lot easier to toss them over the fence next door to my mom for an hour than it is to have somebody come and then go to an office because that's like a 3 hour span versus 1 hour. So sessions are usually like 30 to 40 minutes, kind of depending on what your body wants to release. There's also a whole nother level called a heart wall. And so your body over time will take those trapped emotions and actually build a wall around your heart. Umbrellas are here to protect us when it rains. That's what the heart wall does. The heart wall protects your heart from more pain and agony. So we have a different type of session where we will pick apart sometimes one or two emotions at a time and release those emotions from the wall. Those ones can take 5-10 sessions sometimes, just kind of depending on how ready your body is. And so I always just recommend like start with a basic emotion code and we go from there. We can focus on anything. It can be pain, it can be depression, it can be writer's block, it can be struggle with money, it can be anything. Why is my child having nightmares? I've done some nightmare stuff on my nephew. Um, we can basically do anything. And we just muscle test to see, okay, is there a trapped emotion that is pertaining to the headache you're having? Yes or no? Okay, no. Then is there a trapped emotion for blah, blah, blah? And then we just go through and we muscle test and we figure out where to start. And then we just start. And there's people who come to me and they're like, I don't know where to start. And I'm like, cool, let's just do it general. Let's see what happens. And so that's what we do. We just, ask the body to release anything that is ready to be released.
Hmm.
And those are some of the most interesting sessions because when you're focusing on a hip pain, a lot of times it's going to be tied to things, maybe around the car accident that caused it or whatever. But when you go general, you pull stuff out of the air that is like, whoa, okay. And sometimes, like, when I'm bringing it up, I'm like, okay, so we've got confusion at age 14. Does that ring a bell? And they're like, I've got no clue. That's okay. You don't need to because your subconscious already does. And sometimes they're like, "Oh, no, I know exactly what that is." And so we'll muscle test it. I'm like, "Okay, does it have to do with blah, blah, blah?" And they're, "Yep. All right, cool. There you go." Because the subconscious just wants attention. It wants you to focus on that moment so it can fully release it.
I guess with that, so without going into any confidential information, but like, what would be one of the most, I guess, interesting or like amazing sessions you've had using the emotion code on somebody?
Well, actually, it would be myself.
Okay.
When I was going through the training, we had to do a certain amount of sessions on ourselves, and I didn't know where to start. But I have had this miserable hip pain since the car accident, and I've done chiropractic, I've done massage therapy, I've done you name it. I've probably tried it, and it would come and go, but it's still just consistently there. And when, I switched to a new chiropractor, like, it had dissipated quite a bit, but I'm still having days. So, I was like, "Well, let's start there. Focus on that. We're gonna see what happens." One session, and I think I have now maybe 1 day, maybe 2 a month of, like, a slight twinge instead of extreme pain.
Yeah, I've looked at the emotion code back in the day. I think I even had the magnets and was going through it, but I didn't really deep dive into it. So it's interesting
Mhm.
how
Yeah,
you're able to.
it's a really interesting tool that I would have never thought of. And it was actually my dad. We were sitting there, we were talking about my business. He's like, "What does it look like?" I don't know. He's like, "Why don't you do a motion code?" I'm like, "Well, why would I do that?" And he's like, "Well, because aren't emotions everything?" And I'm like, "Well, yeah, I guess, but I thought I was doing human design." He goes, "Okay, so tell me more." And I'm like, "Well, human design is about emotion." Oh, oh. He's like, "Uh-huh, there it is." And I was like, "Yeah,
And I
okay."
think with what you're doing with, you have the human design, mineralization, and the emotion code. I mean, you're hitting that triage.
Mhm.
You're hitting all three, the mind, body, spirit, soul, whatever you want to
Yeah.
call it. And so it sounds like within that you're looking at people holistically, which is a good thing.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. So it all kinda came together on its own, and it does the trick. I mean,
Nice.
yeah.
Then I guess with that, I want to start wrapping it up. But do you have any advice for people? Maybe they're just starting on their own path. Maybe they're trying to figure out what they want to do, where they want to start. Maybe they have kids that are unruly. What kind of advice would you give them?
Come talk to me, we'll figure out where to start. No, really, it's it all kinda plays together. If you have kids, and even for yourself, but if you have kids especially, and you're struggling with them, give them salt, real salt, Redmond's real salt. Um, give them butter, real butter. Start there. Just see what happens. And get them outside. Get them away from the TV. Get them outside. I watched a documentary, Earthing. I don't know if anybody's ever have you watched that one?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, Earthing is really good, and also Children 2.0. I have never really been a documentary person, but I've dived into those. And so Earthing, Children 2.0, and Terrain um, are probably my top 3 recommendations right now. So if you have some time, sit and watch those. Terrain goes into the germ theory versus terrain theory, which is what I learned a lot about when I went a little woohoo on the whole hospital gown thing. And it's all about you strengthen the terrain so it can deal with anything that is exposed to it rather than avoiding all the germs. Um, and then look into the design. I do my intro sessions are super cheap. They're only $30. We can look at you, we can look at your children and start there and figure out you know, how do you best communicate with the world? How do they best communicate with the world? Because if you have a manifester who doesn't do routine and you are trying to start a routine with them and you're telling them no all day or trying to direct them in a certain way, you're gonna have a hard time.
Hmm.
If you have a generator and you're giving them choices, you're gonna have a hard time. Generators need yes or no. Would you like to brush your teeth right now? Yes or no? Okay, no. All right. So would you like to do it before or after dinner? Before or after, whatever.
Yeah.
They need yes or no. And so if you're giving your children who's degenerate or all these choices, no wonder you're having a hard time because they don't know and they can't decide like that.
Mhm.
And so you start small, you start where you're at, you start where you're comfortable, get your design. Um, I have a link too that I can send you. They can get their own design. And they can get information. It's got quite a bit. Of course, it's locked in certain places because they want you to pay for it. But if you want to venture on your own and you want to learn that on your own, get your chart. And there's a book called Definitive Guide of Human Design and start reading it. But it's a lot. So that's why I always recommend like come to me or even, go to my dad. My dad has done a ton more, but get that chart and just figure out like where you're at. Start here and then, okay, so I need to talk to them like this. And they also need some nervous system help. Give them some butter.
Nice.
You don't have to buy all the expensive things. Don't worry about the multivitamins because most of them are synthetic and they aren't doing anything anyways. Just give them some butter and some salt and start there.
Yeah, and I would also recommend for people who are interested in healthier eating, there's, 2 documentaries on Amazon called Fat and Fat 2. They focus more on, like, the keto diet, the high fat, low carb, but it actually shows how basically getting rid of all the processed food really turned around, like, ADHD for kids, not everybody, of course, helped in some cases of autism, like, it really turned things around for people, and they're even and diabetes.
Mhm.
For sure on that, and they're even saying now that Alzheimer's is basically diabetes 3. It's that compounding issue that they've had all their lives, which is then turning into Alzheimer's.
I'll have to watch those ones.
Yeah.
Another really good one is To Die For, and die is spelled DYE.
Mhm.
It was just released a couple months ago, and it goes into the food dyes, and the
And
different things that it's doing to all of us, but our children especially.
and if you really wanna go down a rabbit hole, there's a very big book called The Invisible Rainbow.
Okay.
That talks about, like, EMFs and how
Oh,
diseases started coming the minute different diseases started coming when we started putting electricity up everywhere and all this other stuff. It's a very thick book, but it's very old too. But
yeah.
it's one of those good foundation books that talks about electricity and how the impact on our bodies over
Uh,
time.
yeah, we didn't even go into the EMF route. I didn't even go down that rabbit hole. But yes, it plays such a big piece. Absolutely.
And then I would say too, for people who are interested in the human design chart, so I did go down that route before I met you and Robert. I did my chart for free, looked at it, and then I paid the $47, whatever it is, for the complete booklet of everything. And it was like 200 something pages. It was a lot to go through. And then I did do a session with Robert after our interview. It was so much nicer to talk to somebody who actually knows the ins and out of the chart. So I would recommend, yourself or your father or just whoever you vibe with when it comes to that. But the book is fine, but it's really nice having someone who can just go, "Oh yeah, look, if you look at this number and this number, this is what that means and that's what this means and how does that resonate to you?" And it's like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense," versus the number 32 is standing for this and that and, it doesn't really explain the true depth I think of having someone who can talk the in and out. So it's much nicer, in my opinion, to talk to a professional.
Yeah. I mean, and I agree. You also have like the personal aspect to that, right? Like, I can read this paragraph to you and it may make no sense, but just talking with you, I can take it. You said this. Okay. So, how does this feel for you?
Yeah,
Because then you've got like the personal aspect to it. So, yeah.
exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, we'll definitely put all your links in the show notes and stuff as well, so that people are interested in reaching out to you, they can.
Okay.
But why don't you just go ahead and say it for people, for those who don't like to look at show notes,
Yeah.
they can get the audio version of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to find me is www.nurturingchildinsight.com.
Perfect.
Yep.
then yeah, we'll list that up, and if you have that waiting list for the family, they can look at that if they want to, and then anything else you wanna share with people, we'll put in the show notes, and they can reach out to you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll get those over to you. I mean, they can always look up Fiercely Empowered Mama, but if they join through my waitlist link, they're gonna get some of the best deals. Like when she opens, they'll also get notification of those free classes
Okay,
and stuff that I talked about that she does towards the end of the year. So I'll make sure to get those over to you.
perfect. Well, I appreciate your time. I guess before we go, is there anything else you wanna share with people? Anything else you wanna talk about that we maybe missed that you feel is important?
I mean, nothing really. I just want parents to be happy being a parent. There's so many parents out there that, all they ever wanted was to be a parent and they wanted to have kids and now they're miserable. Um and they shouldn't have to be that way. There's so many different things out there now, more than just what I'm offering. Like there's so many things. um and then find a community. It doesn't have to be my community. Find a community where you feel comfortable and you can talk about the parenting things without feeling judged. Because our world has grown on guilt, shame, and fear. And those are some of the most negative emotions that you can feel. And if you're feeling those, that's not the place for you. And so, you're welcome to reach out to me. I can give you some other resources if we don't vibe, but find a place where you feel comfortable because parenting should be fun. Parenting is exhausting, but it should be fun and you should be enjoying the moments rather than enjoying 10 minutes out of the 60. You should enjoy 50 out of the 60 and
Yeah.
have the 10 minutes of struggle. So,
Yeah, and on that, I would say too, I mean, just we can all do the best that we can do,
yep.
and you just have we all want better for our kids. We all want to make sure they get everything they need. Do the best you can. Don't judge yourself. And that's the hardest thing I see with parents in general. It's like, "Oh, I failed them." Well, no, you didn't fail them. It's just because you can't give them what they want at that moment doesn't mean you failed them. Maybe that's a good lesson for them to learn that they can't just get what they want when they want it. They have
Yeah.
to earn it or they have to work for it. I mean, I know growing up for me, my parents didn't have a lot of money, so it was, "I want those $150 Reebok pump shoes." My dad's like, "You're crazy." Like, "Go get a job."
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm 12 years old slinging papers. I mean, back then it was easy for a 12-year-old to get a job.
Right. So true.
Nowadays, you 16, 17-year-olds are having a hard time with it.
Yeah.
But, I was 12-year-olds delivering paper to strangers' doors. Probably shouldn't have been doing that, but, it is what
It's a
it is.
different world back then.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I was making a couple $100 a month, and guess what? I bought my shoes.
Yep.
But that taught me, my parents can't always cover things for me. I have to go out and earn it myself.
Mhm.
For me, that was a good lesson. So
Yeah.
just as a parent, you just gotta do the best you can where you can and just it's all gonna turn out. Like, just
Yep.
give it time.
Yep. I agree. One of the favorite sayings that Tanya teaches us is you're exactly where you need to be. Doesn't matter where you are. You're exactly where you need to be. And up until now, I didn't I fed my kid crap up until now.
Yep,
And that kind of helps shift your mindset to a little more positive and not so negative on yourself.
perfect.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think that's a good lesson. Alright, so with that, though, I wanna thank you for coming on. I really enjoyed the conversation, and I hope people reach out to you, and
Jeremy, thank you so much for this opportunity. It has been a blessing, and I've really enjoyed having a conversation with you.
perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Shaman Stories podcast. If you have any interest in the services that I provide or the services of my guest, please click the link in the show notes below. Thank you. And until next time, have a good journey.